Hi. I just wanted to say, and I hope that I'm not repeating something that someone has already said, that march in Charlottesville was highly orchestrated. It wasn't organic. It was funded by a lot of money. How is it that people who work in pizza restaurants can come across the country? They all had fresh haircuts. Their clothes looked pretty new. They were all dressed the same, carrying the same torches. I noticed a couple of men had the expanded earlobes from, the jewelry was missing, that would make, the plugs that people put in their ears. Mm-hmm. It was not an organic thing. It was backed by big money. And Antifa, is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, Antifa.
Yeah. People are accusing George Soros of funding them. Well, yeah. I have grown up with the saying that people accuse you of what they do.
Yep.
Someone funded them. Big money funded them. They came from too many places, too many corners, too far away from Charlottesville. How did they get in and out of Charlottesville? Planes, cars, buses, where did they park? It was too perfect.
That's a damn good question. And it hadn't even occurred to me. And that's a brilliant question. Where did the money come from for all this to happen? I honestly have no idea what the answer to that question is. And it's not inconceivable that this was crowdfunded, through some sort of platform like Patreon or whatever, but I don't know. But thank you for putting the question out there. Hopefully somebody who does have some sense of it will find out, and maybe some journalists who are on this can be looking into it. That's a great question. And I'm sorry I don't have the answer to it, but it's a great question, and hopefully somebody will have the answer. And thank you so much for the call.
Hey, well, first let me tell you that it was a very sad day in Charlottesville when we had our protest march. Charlottesville is a beautiful, sweet little city, and we just are heartbroken that such evil people entered our town. So, and speaking of which, you had a caller earlier. Her name was Ann. It was about 45 minutes ago. And she mentioned, who is funding these people? Because clearly, as she said, they were not organic. And she is correct. They are not homegrown town people that came.
Well, the federal government gave Richard Spencer $2 million in farm price supports for the 5,000 acres of cotton that he's got down in the South, where he's got, other people picking his cotton. So, there's some money.
Well, explain to me that connection. I don't understand it.
Richard Spencer's family, he and his mother own, let me find the exact numbers here. They own 5,200 acres of cotton. They recently, in Louisiana, they recently sold 1,600 acres. They must have had 6,800 acres. They recently sold 1,600 acres for $4.3 million. But the Spencer Farms, this is from an article in Mother Jones by Lance Williams, by the way, just FYI, that just came out today. The Spencer family's farms are also subsidized by the federal government. From 2008 through 2015, the Spencers received $2 million in U.S. farm subsidy payments. And then toward the end of the article, one is the Commodity Subsidy Program, intended to guarantee income for farmers who are helping to maintain supplies of certain crops deemed important by the government. The other is the Conservation Reserve Program, which pays farmers for environmentally sound farming practices. Most of the $2 million paid to the Spencers has been in commodity subsidy payments for growing cotton.
So Richard Spencer, whom I've never heard about, is a farmer, and you think subsidized. He's been subsidized as a farmer from the federal government.
Yeah, he's not a farmer. He's this guy who wears fancy clothes, and he's like the head Nazi in the United States. I mean, he runs. He wouldn't. I doubt he would call himself a Nazi, but he runs this nonprofit thing. It's now a for-profit think tank called the National Policy Institute that he does these things through. He's the guy who organized the thing right after Trump was elected, where he was up at the podium going, hail victory, which is Sieg Heil, and hail Trump, and they were all doing these Nazi salutes. This is the guy who did right here in Washington, D.C. I think it was at the National Press Club he was doing this. And, it shocked and horrified everybody. Now he's put this thing on steroids. And he himself is a multimillionaire.
And so you think that he's behind the subsidizing these huge buses coming into Little Charlottesville and these angry people pouring out, and they wear hoodies. They don't have any connection with Charlottesville. They're just paid protesters.
It's possible. Mary, did you see buses coming in, bringing people in, bringing in these right-wingers?
Yes.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Did the buses have anything painted on them? Were they like,
No. No, they were big transportation buses, just huge buses.
Just rental buses.
Oh, and these were not local people at all.
Right.
Unbelievable. And where do they come from? And who? They're not volunteers. They don't really have a skin in the game. They're just paid people to riot and disrupt. And
I doubt they're paid. I would not be surprised if their expenses were paid, but I would be surprised if they were paid. I mean, these people actually do hate people of color. They actually do hate Jews. They actually do think that women should not have any rights in our society. I mean, they actually believe that white people are the pinnacle of evolution and therefore should run absolutely everything, especially white men. They believe this stuff.
Well, yes, those 1%, maybe 2% of the population maybe have those kinds of feelings, but no.
And that's who showed up. Well, and I think it's a lot more than 1 or 2%, frankly.
They are sponsored by people. They are professional agitators. They are making a living doing this, and I wished I could have gotten on the bus and gone with them and gotten to know them and see where they're coming from and who's paying them, because that was not an organic rally.
Well, I'm guessing there's probably some good investigative reporters out who are chasing down, who are going down that rabbit hole that you're describing, Mary.
I sure hope so, but I'm not reading about it or hearing about it. And clearly, these were outside agitators, and why would they show up?
Have you seen the piece on Vice, the documentary that Vice News did on this?
No.
It's really, really worth watching. Vice is owned by the same company that owns NBC, by Comcast, and they had an embedded reporter down there who was, an attractive young white woman who apparently represented herself to these people, at the very least, as not being a threat to them, because they just opened up to her. Perhaps they thought she was one of them. And, talking about killing people and talking about what they're doing and why they're doing it, it's really, really worth the effort. Mary, I've got to move along, but thank you for the call. We'll see. There's no doubt in my mind that somebody is going to be doing the investigative work on this. Mary, thank you for the call.